We can get even more specific with structural pseudoclasses using ones that can target particular types of elements. For example, the nth of type pseudoclass targets an element based on its position within a parent element, but only if it's a specific type of element. This is a more flexible pseudoclass selector if we want to be sure we're selecting the same type of element no matter where it is inside the parent, or what other elements appear before it. So I've set up an HTML page containing sibling div and paragraphs that are all children of the body element. I've also added a few styles in the CSS file to make the divs appear as boxes that are laid out next to each other. So what if we only want to select and style certain boxes on the page using the nth of type selector? In our style sheet, we'll create our selector by first specifying the div element, then colon, nth of type, and a set of parentheses. So let's go ahead and select the second div on the page and give it a background color of blue. So inside of our parentheses, we will pass the argument 2 to select the second div. We'll then give it the background color property and the value steel blue. So again, we're instructing the browser to target every second div inside a parent element. So we'll go ahead and save the style sheet. And when we refresh, we see the styles applied only to our second div. Now, if we wanted to style every other div, we can change the argument to odd or even. So let's go ahead and give it the argument odd. So now when we save and refresh, we can see how the odd numbered divs are the ones targeted. Even if we add more sibling elements before or after our divs, so I'll just go ahead and paste some paragraphs. When we save it, notice how the div elements are still the only ones selected, because again, with nth of type, we've specifically instructed the browser to select the odd div child elements, no matter what other elements are around them. So I'll just go ahead and undo this. We can also use nth last of type, which works just like nth of type, except that it starts counting from the last child. So for example, if we change our selector to nth last of type, then pass the argument 1, when we save it and refresh, we can see how the last div child is the one selected. And if we change our argument to, say, 3, now the third div from the last of its type is the one selected. In the previous stage, we covered the only child selector, which targets an element that is the only child inside a parent. But there is one more structural pseudoclass that's useful for selecting an element that is the only one of its type in its parent element. So let's go ahead and take a look. In our markup, notice how there is only one paragraph element. It's the only one of its type within the parent body. Now, the divs are not because, as we can see, there are 4 of them. In our style sheet, if we create an only of type selector by first specifying the paragraph followed by colon only of type, then give it a color property and the value blue. When we save it and hit refresh, we see how the paragraph is selected because, again, it's the only paragraph element of its type within the body element. But if we add another paragraph to the body, when we refresh this, we can see that no paragraphs are selected because now there are 2 of them. But if we add a paragraph as a child element of one of our divs, for example, I'll add it to box 2 and box 4, when we save our HTML file and refresh the browser, notice how the new paragraphs are targeted by the browser and turn blue because they are the only paragraphs within their parent divs.